Alhamdulillah, thank you for the clarification. Now, I had just a few more questions on the topic of the gatherings of dhikr, the remembrance of Allah. And one of the questions is, could you explain to us what a hadrah is and what the hukm is on the hadrah?
Alhamdulillah, salatu ala Rasulillah. When people come together for gatherings of dhikr, what will sometimes happen is some of the people will begin holding hands, and there might be white runners laid down, or green runners, or blue runners, and they began to gather in a circle or across in lines and to sway back and forth.
Okay.
Sometimes jumping in circles, sometimes moving back and forth. Now, they would say this movement in dhikr goes back to a statement where the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam told Ja'far ibn Abi Talib some great news, to the degree that Ja'far ibn Abi Talib got up and hopped back and forth from one leg to the other. However, this narrative sometimes states that it's Abu Bakr and sometimes states that it's Ja'far. So it's not a completely accounted for narrative. Secondly, what on earth does this got to do with swaying back and forth or running in a line or doing jumping jacks? Has nothing to do with this. But this is one of the proofs that some people use to try to establish Hadrah. We know that this first time this was tried, people tried to use this as an evidence, was 150 years ago in North Africa. Then this aspect of Hadrah made its way to Sham.
Yeah.
Before this time, Sham had nothing at all of these affairs. This practice began in North Africa 150 years plus. Before that time, it was unknown in North Africa as well. So when people are talking about the Hadrah, this is what they're making reference to. And this is why Imams like Al-Buti, Abu Zuhaili, and others have said there's no text for this, because there is not. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib or Abu Bakr or others were responding to this, some good news, has nothing to do with making it a regular. That was a spontaneous event. You're talking about having runners laid out on the floor and actually come. That's not spontaneous. It's a planned, orchestrated, rhythmic performance of some kind. Was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was he in the middle while Ja'far was hopping around him? No. As far as the Ethiopian boys in the masjid, that was on Eid day, and they were practicing with their weapons and archery. You want to go out and shoot some guns or shoot some crossbows? I'm the first to go with you. But I don't know what that's got to do with gathering in lines or a circle with runners laid down, moving back and forth in unison, or sometimes jumping 5 and 10 feet in the air. I'm not sure what that's to do with that. But it's not been handed down to us by Shaikh Abu Ja, any of his students or anyone else. This is 150 years plus.
Can we also call it a false wedge when they jump like that?
Yes, because the people that are doing this often will think, and it's the same thing when people start excessively rocking back and forth.
Yes.
There are nerves along your neck and shoulder blades. If you rock your head side to side, if you pinch one of those nerves, you pass out.
Side to side, you mean looking left or right, basically? That would
no, when you're swinging your head side to side,
right?
If you do that enough, you could pinch a nerve.
Okay.
And that nerve can cause you to pinching that nerve can cause you to pass out.
Okay.
If you because you know that there's certain nerves you can hit when you put people in certain chokes, whether you're talking about martial arts or MMA. And one of those is the ones in the neck and along the shoulder blades. So some people will do that, pass out and think, oh, Allah had a message for me. He caused that to me. No, actually, you pinched that nerve. That's all that was. And that's your own deception why that happened to you. It's got nothing to do with anything that you derive from this. This is all pageantry.
We do not object to when someone has like this natural rhythm, right? Like let's say they're repeating a particular dhikr or reading the Quran, when they have like slight movements which comes like naturally against stress.
This type of thing is not praiseworthy, but it's not blameworthy if it's happening. If it's happening as a way that they're keeping rhythm. Some people pace when they memorize.
Yeah.
Some people walk back and forth. Some people might rock and do so. This is not harmful in and of itself. But what the issue is when people associate these affairs of the Hadrah as if they are a sunnah or a means. Whenever something is said that this is a means of gaining nearness to Allah, anything that there's a means of gaining nearness to Allah has a source or supporting pillar in the revealed law. And it's something yahtaju bih. It's something that can be used as an evidence to state it. So if I say, oh, brother, Iskandar, you should recite Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Ikhlas frequently, because it's like a third of the Quran. What makes you say that? There's the hadith of the Rasul that says, whoever recites the Ikhlas is full Quran. It's like he recited a third of the Quran. There we are. That's the source. That's the mustanid. That's the thing we're leaning on. Otherwise, I'm speaking presumptuously.
Yes.
If I just make a statement like that, it's recited a third of the Quran. How do you know that? Well, you just should. No. That's not how we do things. Our faith is evidential. That means it's based on evidential matters.
So one can be in a gathering with dhikr, whether he stands or sits. This is permissible when making dhikrullah, standing or sitting.
Yes. But because an example of standing making dhikr is when you're in your salah.
All right, mashallah. Yeah.
When you're in ruku', you're making dhikr. When you come up, you're making dhikr. When you're sitting, you're making dhikr.
Right.
There's no when you're laying down, before you go to bed and you say, Bismillahumma mutu ahyat, this is dhikr. Standing, sitting, lying down. These are all times where adhkar can be made. There's no blame in that.
Yeah.
But the stipulated matters and mandated affairs should be adhered to.
Yes. And the impermissibility that comes whenever one is exaggerating with swaying his body, whether he's sitting or standing.
When someone does something in which he or she attributes something to the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when someone says this is a noble thing to do, or this is a sunnah thing to do, or this is something I'm hoping to gain nearness to Allah by doing, anything that one gains nearness to Allah by doing is because it's pleasing to Allah. And anything pleasing to Allah, He's told you how it's done. So we have to be sure that this is how it's done. Yes. Things that happen incidentally, we have no issue with. But when someone says this is pleasing to Allah, we're doing dhikr. Dhikr is pleasing to Allah. And dhikr is a means of gaining nearness to Allah. So the matters that are being connected to that must be the matters that He stipulated to gain nearness to Him that is pleasing. We must be mindful of this.
This act of whirling, what is the hukm on that?
This is something that was attributed to Jalaluddin al-Rumi. And alhamdulillah, I've not been able to find a text from him as of yet stating that this is something that's a goal. The point behind the people that engage in this behavior is that they say that the person doing this is remembering Allah's name, and that by remembering Allah's name, he is moving in the same direction as the Kaaba. So when you're making tawaf around the Kaaba, saying that's what I'm imitating. Well, then why don't you make tawaf? See, these types of things, and they wear distinctive hats though, where like three jalabiyas and a massive tarbush and these type of things. And there's a lot of other things that are connected to this. But what that's got to do with gaining nearness to Allah is unknown. Because there will be people that do this, but they don't pray at all.
Allahu Akbar.
So wait a minute. So why is this being done then? We have a right to ask questions.
Yes.
And when we ask questions not because we seek to provoke people, but we seek to understand what's happening.
Yes.
Any more than if someone came and saw I was praying with my hands at my side. They'd want to know why I'm doing that. Not to challenge me, not to argue with me, but they're thinking, man, I'll do that too. SubhanAllah. Sometimes people see things they want to know, so then they can implement it too, because they know if they start implementing it, other people will also ask them, where did you get this from? So it may be that the person is not arrogant or looking to be troublesome or meddlesome or has a quarrelsome personality. He or she merely wants to know, why is this being done again? Okay, well, because of this text. Okay, all right, okay. But this is the amal of the early generations, as was mentioned here. Oh, subhanAllah. I didn't know that. That's why we do this. Okay. People have a right to ask. The angels asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He didn't say, I created you. Don't ask me questions. No. He answered the question by demonstrating to them the reality of Nabiyuna Adam alayhi salam and his extraordinary gifts that he'd been given. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And he taught Adam names of all things. Surah Al-Baqarah, 2nd Surah, 29. These are the realities.
What is actually the meaning when we talk about sessions of sama'? And again, this might also be abused as well.
Alhamdulillah. Sama' has been mentioned by Shaikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani in countless books and a number of books, as well as Imam Rajab rahimahullah, as well as Imam Muwafiquddin al-Qudama. The act of sama' is usually the sitting and listening to the recitation of the Quran, wise aphorisms, and a kitab in the gathering in which there will be a reader, and the reader conveys the information. This is a sama'. I've been doing sama'as in the place where I've been living for maybe 7-8 years. There are no xylophones. There are no cymbals. No one got up and played the accordion.
Yes.
There's not a saxophone being played in the back with a drum machine or an SP 1200. None of those things are there. The purpose of the sama' is to convey the news to people, the common slaves of Allah. The sama' is for the people that they can't study like the sciences of things because they're bakers or they're things like that. I can't study the science of tafsir. It's too much. Okay, well, this is something for you then. And it's conveying news to them. That's why Shaikh Abu Ja rahimahullah, he said, if someone reading Quran in the sama' happens to make some mistakes that aren't severe mistakes in Tajwid, don't correct him, but let him read because he's rewarded for his effort. Because they're not severe mistakes. And the point of this is that the person hears the Quran, he's gathered together with some slaves of Allah, then he hears some wise admonition and some good things and some adhkar, maybe they do some adhkar, and then they eat. This is sama'. We've been doing this for years in this area where I live. This is sama'. And since we've been doing it, countless aspects of bid'ah have just come down. Countless aspects of bid'ah they've just come down. They've decreased. And instead, those bid'ah have been replaced from the barakah that's come from the sama'. So bid'ah has been lessened and the barakah has gone up.
And
Because we're hearing Quran, we're hearing wise statements of the scholars, we're hearing some poetry that a scholar might recite in the book or what have you. Then there's questions and answers. Then we eat and share each other's company and pleasantry. We do dua after, before and after. That is sama. That is sama.
On this topic now, there's one last thing that I wanted to ask you, which is in regards to the Abdal. Now, there is this certain misconception today. The misconception is that people consider them to be just righteous people, or they say the Abdal or Sufiya, but they're not ulama. And so they say any person from that rank and file can be from the Abdal. Where is this misconception coming from?
Alhamdulillah. Much of what we hear of these types of things, if you look in the life and times of Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, he is referred to as the Qutb of his age, meaning the leader of the Abdal. And then the Qutb before him is being mentioned, who it was before him, and we know who that is, right? There's not been a case like that. That was a layman. Now, every believer, every faithful believer is a wali of Allah. Every faithful believer is a wali of Allah. The laity, every faithful layman is a wali of Allah. But not every wali of Allah is a layman. The Abdal, it is mentioned about them in the Hadith in Abu Dawood and Nasai. That is because of their worship and effort and knowledge that the rain and sustenance is sent down to you. Because they're barakah. Imam Taqi ibn Taymiyyah, quoting from a previous text to him from Imam Yahya Sarsari, rahimahullah, died in 656, the great blind Sufi Sheikh from Baghdad, in which he referred to Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah as a big circle. And inside of that circle was one group, and inside of that circle was another group. And then the highest rank of that are the Abdal, which are the highest ranking scholars. No one understands. That's in al-Aqidatul Wasitiyah. No one ever understood that the Abdal are merely laity. No one understood this. When we understand that the Abdal are the first that come from Sham and Iraq, they're the first to get the bay'ah to the Mahdi. They're the only ones that would know him because they're the only ones that understand all the ahadith and their application. The laymen don't know that. There's people that think that the Mahdi is coming every year to Hajj. There was a period of about 5 years people were saying the Mahdi is going to be at Hajj this year. No, he's not.
Yeah.
And listen, if the Mahdi's at Hajj this year, a lot of other things are going to go down. Him being at Hajj is the least of your worries. Because when he gets to Jerusalem, it's going to really be serious. So that is not true. But this issue has to do with people make these elaborate lists, such and such is the qutb of the such and such and such is the wetib of such and such is the muqaddam and the wetid, the muqaddam, the qutb, and all these other things. Shaikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani rahimahullah was asked about this. He says none of this is true. Other than what's been conveyed to us in clear text. Ibn Hajar called it a fabrication law, where people create these lists. There are 714 qutubs. And then the wetted, there are 244,000 of the wetted. What? No, there's no text for this. No text at all for that.
The authentic texts then are about the Abdal and the Qutb. That's what.
Yes, that's all we have. That's all we have. We know that the head of the Abdal are referred to as Qutb. That's all we have. That's what we know. And that the Abdal are referred to in 4 or 5 different ahadith. That's not up for argument. But the Malumatiya and the Qalandariya, which are aberrant Sufi groups, are the ones responsible for this being made out.
Oh wow.
the Qalandariya and the Malamatiya.
SubhanAllah.
And books have been written against false Sufiya that ascribe, that mention these cults and describe them in detail. Yeah.
Now, I wanted to conclude this by asking you about how to remedy certain diseases that the Muslims today are suffering from, such as laziness, procrastination, time wasting, and the like. So, how should a Muslim go about remedying such diseases?
Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. We can't talk about this without talking about another issue before it,
Sure.
which is the abuse of ruqya.
Oh,
Because pretenders to Sufi also abuse ruqya.
oh.
And often will have people thinking that they need to have ruqya for everything, or they need to have you must have a jinn, or you must be possessed, and you must. Here's the thing: if somebody really has a jinn troubling them, or they really are demon possessed, you won't think that they are. You'll know that they are.
Okay.
You'll know that they are. I've seen supernatural behaviors in people, or uniquely evil demonic behavior. There wasn't a doubt. It wasn't, I wish I understood what this was. No, it definitely was that. Much of what the people are seeing today, especially in the English-speaking world, is mental health issues. Neurosis, OCD, that's got nothing to do with jinn. That's something wrong in your head because of certain obsessions you have, certain issues that you have, and certain shortcomings that you have. It's nothing to do with a demon. It's not. And so no ruqya is required because there's no jinn present, because you know if there was a jinn present. You know if it was, you wouldn't be asking me, I think, could it be? If you see real sorcery, you don't say, I think that might be sorcery. No, it is. If you see real sorcery, if you see real Satanism, where things are sacrificed or where people are engaged in animal sacrifices, where you see that the Aztecs in Mexico, there's some that still engage in human sacrifice. When you see the proof of this and you see newspaper articles and news, that is incontrovertible proof. Then this comes to, okay, well, if we have this widespread issue of mental health among big bodies of Muslims, and a great portion of it is not jinn, then what is the remedy for this? Okay. Alhamdulillah. It will come down to three areas. One is the organization of time. Things such as laziness and depression and things like this are happening because people don't have meaning in their time. I'm not discounting chemical imbalances where people actually need to take certain things to balance that chemical imbalance. I'm not talking about chemical imbalances or hormonal issues. I'm talking about people that have issues that don't require medical intervention in the sense of the use of pills or tinctures or other medicine. So because people don't have meaning in their life, they become depressed. Because they don't have meaning in their life, they become lazy. Because they don't have meaning in their life, they become listless. Someone's day must be filled with purpose. It must be filled with goals. People must make short-term and long-term goals and to drive towards those goals, whether those be dini goals or whether they be professional goals. Now, I'm going to date myself, but I think it's sometimes useful, I would say, to buy a planner or a jotting diary that breaks down weekly and daily. And what you do is at the beginning of your week, which for me is Sunday, Sunday's the first day of the week, I break down the things I need to get done in that week. So each day when I turn a page, I see the day's activities. And I shoot to complete those activities. And when I do, I put a check mark next to it, what they call a tick in Europe. I put a check mark next to it. If I don't, I leave it blank, means I missed it. Next day, I see, okay, can I hit this goal? Every day, I have a goal for in the week. Juma is blank. Juma and Saturday is blank. I have my wirds and my stuff, but I'm saying in terms of my targeting. 5 days a week, I'm going hard. Sunday or Saturday night going into Sunday, I'm writing out the week's work again. I'm back on it. You need goals, short-term and long-term. You need order. And you need things to shoot for that give your life purpose, meaning, and drive you to want to do more. This is the first thing. Secondly, you need to find like-minded people where you drive one another, because most people aren't solitary drivers. Some people are solitary drivers where they're motivated no matter what. They might be surrounded by people who are not motivated and they're motivated. But most people aren't like that. You need to find people, even if it's only one other person or two other people, that are like-minded, motivated, so that you push one another, so that you fastabiqul khayyarat, compete in good deeds, as mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, second juz. Compete in good deeds. So you compete with each other in good deeds. You encourage one another. You incite one another. You enjoin one another. This is the second thing that you need. The third is that you must complete, after having completed your fard ayn knowledge, because this is coming before these three, fard ayn knowledge has got to get done, right? After completing your fard ayn knowledge, you need to ask Allah, Lord, where would you put me? All of us are instruments for Allah. We should be looking to know, where should I be? Where would I be best suited? It's one thing, your profession. Okay, my profession is I am a steel worker. Okay. But in addition to that, what does Allah want you to do that's also very pleasing to him besides that? Like, what else does he, where else would he have you be? To ask, where should I be? What should I do? Do you have a passion that drives you? Something that dwells deep within you? You must push for that. You must go forward for that. Those three things, I would say, are probably a good remedy when someone doesn't have a chemical issue or a hormonal issue that's causing these things. Outside of chemical or hormonal issues, those are three good ways that could kickstart someone into doing some great activities, into making some goals. And within number one of those three is exercise. If you can't train every day, train every other day. That's too much for my body. Okay, how about 5 days a week? Can you do that? You should at least train 3 times a week, an hour each of those days that you train, to challenge your body. There should be a portion of the exercise that's strength and a portion of it that's explosive, something explosive, where either it's a sprint or a run or a burpee or a jumping jack, something explosive. Just an hour. At the part of the day that's the most convenient, where it's slow and you know you won't be disturbed. For some people, that might be the end of the day. For some people, it's the middle. For some people, whatever. But at some point, it should be done. Try to get the reward.
Alhamdulillah. Barakallah fiqh. And as a final before closing, we spoke about the Ihsan and we spoke about how the Hanabila implemented all of this. Now, I want to ask you, what is your final advice for the people listening to this?
Alhamdulillah. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. My final advice is to take your time building your knowledge, to build slowly, but with determination, to prepare yourselves, to be wise, and to realize that this life is one of, it's known as Dar al-Bawar. It's for testing and toil. And the Akhir is Dar al-Qarar. It's the abode of permanence and establishment. Prepare for this. All of us know, even if we've been 20 months locked away because of the influenza, all of us know that when we want to travel, we need to have certain paperwork, certain documents, certain literature, and certain affairs in order before we can travel, a suitcase packed, changes of clothes, toothbrush. Well, in the same vein, for your akhirah travel, do you have your passport for the akhirah? Do you have things packed, so to speak? Do you have your travel documents? All of these things you need to make sure to have. The one thing that could slow you down from being the best that you can be is the spirit of contention. The spirit of contention and debate is a wily spirit, and you need to slow it. You need to stop it and prevent it, and to be around people that encourage you to be better so you can encourage them as well. And you will not be sorry. You will not have any regrets when you maintain those principles, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who strive in his cause. He loves those who strive in his cause. And as the hadith runs, Rasulullah said, when Allah is pleased with his slave, he keeps him happy in his cause. And when Allah is displeased with his slave, he leaves him in debates and arguments. So this in the Jami' al-Saghir, we have to make sure to keep protection. Stay busy for Allah's sake. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will richly bless you.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you for your time, Sheikh. May Allah reward you and your family.
Oh, yeah.
And I give the last word to you in closing.
We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us, favor us, put the good in the deeds that we've done in our statements and actions in this life and the hereafter. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our families, the elders that came before us, the first three generations, those who preceded us in Iman. We say, our Lord, don't put any rancor in our heart towards those generations that preceded us. Indeed, you are the benevolent, the compassionate. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا ورسولنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم أجمعين يا أرحم الراحمين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك إنه غفور رحيم يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.